Greetings and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for Monday, June 7th, 2021. Call the meeting to order at 6:30 PM. Let the record reflect that all councilors are present, including the city administrator. This time we'll ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag being located behind City Administrator Canrath. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone. Under general, we have a few things this evening. June is PTSD or Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month. Whereas June has been declared as PTSD Awareness Month each year around the world, and whereas for centuries we have recognized post-traumatic stress disorder, and whereas PTSD can affect all ages, children through seniors, and whereas treatment for PTSD is available, and whereas it is up to each of us to know that the PTSD assessment form is a major tool to seek medical assistance, and whereas PTS Awareness Month urges all to seek help for those who may have PTSD requiring medical assistance. Now, therefore, I, Mayor William Doyle of Saco, Maine, do hereby proclaim June as PTSD Awareness Month in our city and encourage the residents of Saco to actively learn about PTSD assessment form written by the Center for PTSD Research as a tool to assist those affected by PTSD to obtain medical assistance. Signed this the 7th day of June, 2021 by the Mayor of Saco. With that, I would also like to remind the council to have the charter amendments that they would like to see before the end of the year. If you could get those into the city administrator by the 21st, by the meeting on the 21st, so we can start looking at those for a November voting cycle. With that, several events going on in the community upcoming. First off, we have the Saco Parks and Rec Summer Kickoff Community Picnic, which is this Saturday, June 12th at 11 a.m. Again, this Saturday, June 12th at 11 a.m. Also on the 12th is the Mornings with the Mayor here at City Hall at 9 o'clock. And then, excuse me, Saco Main Street is hosting the Maine's Longest Banana Split on June 20th at 10 a.m. June 20th at 10 a.m. And then Old Orchard Beach will be having a FEMA COVID vaccination clinic from the 15th to the 18th, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 77 Milliken Street, operated by FEMA. And you can get more information on that through the website. With that, I believe that is all the general matters this evening. That brings us to item 5, committee correspondence to council. Any committee correspondence at this time? Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, you just mentioned events, I would like to thank all of the volunteers, the staff with Saco Main Street, for our first event of the season, Bark in the Park, which was held this past Saturday. It was an amazing event, great vendors, food trucks. People were happy to be out and about. It was a great time to see old friends and make some new ones. And as you mentioned, we do have the world's longest banana split event coming up. This is a new event, which is going to be held on Father's Day, June 20th. We are planning for the 3rd anniversary of the Saco Scoop. We are going to be constructing a 120-foot banana split, which will double Maine's longest banana split set in 2019 by the Woods at Canco Road of Portland. If anybody would like to help volunteer to be on the assembly crew, you can email Saco Main Street 3@gmail.com. We'll be looking for a large handful of volunteers who'll be willing to construct and get it ready. And everybody in attendance will get a free banana split afterwards, after it's been measured and recorded. So it's going to be an exciting, fun day. And then also on that, if you follow the Saco Main Street Facebook page, we do have our complete listing of events for the summer posted. And we are ready for a fun-filled summer and getting back to normal. So we do have the art festival on the 26th, the car show on the 24th, and then we also have returning the music in the parking lot at Dyer Library on Thursday night starting July 8th. So again, for a complete listing, anybody can follow the Saco Main Street Facebook page. And we are always looking for volunteers to help. So if you'd like to, again, that's Saco Main Street 3@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor McPhail. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. You, Mr. Mayor, already touched upon this, but the summer kickoff community picnic is this Saturday, June 12th, 11 to 3 p.m. You can arrive anytime during that period. The theme is tie-dye or Hawaiian t-shirts, and you do have to pre-register though. So it's free, but you have to pre-register. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was due to the change from our dog ordinance, dogs cannot be on the athletic fields, so you can't bring your dog. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Any further committee correspondence to council? Okay, moving on. Before I move on, I did want to mention one thing I forgot under general is Attorney McGill, on advice of Attorney McGill, there will be no executive session this evening. With that, we move on to item 6, public comment. City Administrator Canrath, have we received any public comment for tonight's meeting?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll move on to members of the public who wish to speak before the council. Please use the raise hand feature or *9 and you'll be unmuted to speak to the council. Again, the raise hand feature or *9. First up is JC. JC, you've been allowed to unmute. Please go ahead and do so. State your name and address for the record and present your comments to the City Council.
Hello, this is Jane Karen, Ward 5, 264 Lincoln Street in Saco. And I hope you folks are all having a good evening. My comment is in regards to an agenda item for this evening for the 32 Market Street parcel. And included in that is some requests and considerations for additional setback for that parcel in order to assure that Diamond Park Trail and also the Eastern Trail development is possible. So I just wanted to state that it's very important that the council support those requests. And it's just looking forward to, in the best interest of the citizens, so that everyone would be able to access and use those trails as they get developed. So that was a concern of mine, and I just want to share those thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Up next, we have John Harkins. John, you've been allowed to unmute. Please go ahead and do so. State your name and address for the record and present your comments to the City Council.
John Harkins, 4 Christopher Terrace, Saco. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Several weeks ago, I posed several questions that were to be answered, which were not. I followed up a couple of weeks back with a letter to the council to be read at public comment. Unfortunately, the city administrator chose not to read aloud the complete letter. He redacted the opening paragraph. This is a very bad practice. It can lead to many complications. This should not be happening in this town. He should be reprimanded for this oversight, which was deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you, John. There are no other hands up. We are moving on to item 7 of tonight's agenda. That is approval of the minutes for May 17th and May 24th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Councilor McPhail, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Any discussion on the minutes? Councilor Hatch?
Yes, I did notice a very minor typo, unless it's been corrected since the minutes were issued. Top of page 3 of the May 24th minutes. Actually, it's first paragraph is a public hearing is misspelled. There's the A is missing from the word. So I just wanted to make sure that that was corrected.
City Administrator Canrath, can we make sure that's corrected?
Will do, yes.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Again, I'll be voting no against these minutes, not because I have an issue with the minutes as written. The issue remains that no council ever authorized the change to the manner in which council's minutes were ever recorded. It was done by the city administrator back in January of 2020 without any input from council, which, in my opinion, is not really in line with the charter. For 18 months or thereabouts, I've waited for an opportunity to discuss the creation of a minutes policy, and I've yet to have that opportunity. So again, going forward, I hope to see that. And if not, I'm going to ask that my fellow councilors support my request. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. City Administrator Canrath?
thank you. If I could just note, that was previous to my arrival here, that change being made. So thank you.
Thank you, City Administrator Canrath. Any further discussion on the minutes? Roll call vote on the minutes. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. That brings us to item 8. There are no consent items tonight, so that brings us to item 9, action items. First up, we have item A, a public hearing, renewal application for special entertainment permit for run-of-the-mill. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Island Brewing LLC, doing business as the run-of-the-mill, has applied for renewal of their special entertainment permit. The permit would be concurrent with the establishment's liquor license. The applicant has paid all applicable permit fees, and the clerk has properly advertised the public hearing in accordance with Saco City Code, Chapter 93, Entertainment, Section 93-2. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made to open the public hearing by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Hatch to open the public hearing. Any discussion on open the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 at 6:44 PM. The public hearing is now open. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak regarding the renewal application for special entertainment permit run-of-the-mill, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom or *9, and you'll be unmuted to deliver your comments to the city council. Seeing no hands raised, Councilor Johnston.
Move to close the public hearing and be it ordered, City Council grant the renewal application submitted by Island Brewing LLC, doing business as the run-of-the-mill, for a special entertainment permit concurrent with the establishment's current liquor license. Move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Purdy. Discussion on closing the public hearing. Roll call vote. Councilor Archer,
Aye.
Councilor Purdy,
Yeah.
Councilor Gunn,
Yes.
Councilor Berman,
Yes.
Councilor Hatch,
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Close the public hearing and grant the license at 6:46 PM. That brings us to item B, a first reading, chapter 176 sewer ordinance, repeal existing chapter 176 and replace with rewritten sewer ordinance to be codified as chapter 186. Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since summer of 2019, the WRRD staff and the consultant have been rewriting chapter 176 of the city ordinance. This proposed rewrite better aligns the city's local ordinance with state requirements of its main pollutant discharge elimination system, permit federal requirements of the Clean Water Act, and best practices from the EPA. This revision incorporates an updated impact fee schedule and other revisions based on months of research. Refer to the accompanying exhibits for background details. I move to approve the first reading and schedule a public hearing on July 12th, 2021 regarding the following order. In substantially the same form as presented, be it ordered that the City Council repeals existing Chapter 176 of the city's ordinance and hereby ordains that redrafted Chapter 176 as presented at the public hearing and shall be adopted in place of the existing ordinance in its entirety.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? I see we have promoted Howard Carter and Emily Cole Prescott. Howard, anything before the council makes a decision on the first reading? Any update?
No, we pretty previous to what we did last week or 2 weeks ago. We have the memo describing some of the bigger changes. We have the regulatory crosswalk that I think is pretty self-explanatory. And certainly if you have any questions, certainly reach out. And we have the little presentation on how to go through that. We've laid out everything from minor to major. So some of the big things being connection to power to public sewer, sub-meter program, and impact fees are the big ones. And we're certainly open to any questions if you have any, or if not, you can always email and we can bring them up next week, or when we have the public hearing on the 12th, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Emily, anything?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Howard summed it up.
Thank you. Any council questions, discussion on this? Seeing no hands raised, no councilors seeking recognition, roll call vote. First reading, Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy,
Yeah.
Councilor Gunn,
Yes.
Councilor Berman,
Yes.
Councilor Hatch,
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Thank you,
folks.
Howard. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
That brings us to item C, which was tabled from May 24th, 2021. It's a final reading on a zone change request, 97 New County Road, 105 New County Road, 106 New County Road, 107 New County Road, and tax map 96, lot 1. And that is Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Applicants John and Linda Fenderson are asked that the zoning of their property west residential be changed to rural conservation. The Fendersons own and live on the property at 97 New County Road. They run a small farming operation with livestock and crops. The Fendersons are near but do not abut the boundary that separates the WR from the RC. The property of their abutting neighbors to the west, Patterson, separates the Fendersons parcel from the WR RC boundary. The Pattersons own two parcels, one on each side of New County Road, and theirs are the westerly-most parcels still in the WR district. The Pattersons too have requested a change of zoning for their two parcels from WR to RC. The item was reviewed by the planning board at its March 30th meeting. After discussion and a public hearing, the board voted to forward a positive recommendation to the council. During the council's discussion on April 20th, an earlier map showing the potential for a portion of city-owned land to be included in the rezoning was referenced. See proposed solar Fenderson plan. I move to approve the final reading and adopt the rezoning request for the following parcels off a new county road, tax map 87, lot 17, and tax map 96, lots 9, 9 tac 1, 1, and 2.
Councilor Archer, I think we need a motion to remove it from the table first.
Oh.
It was tabled from the 24th, so I think we're just, if we all remember back to the 24th, it was tabled because there was some concerns about the numbers in the final motion. So it was tabled, and so now we just need to untable it and then amend the motion however we need to, and then take that item up. So
That's correct. So I withdraw my motion, and I motion that we untable this from the docket, or to the docket.
motion's been made by Council Archer to untable the item. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. To untable, any discussion? Roll call vote to untable. Council Archer,
Aye.
Councilor Purdy,
Yes.
Councilor Gunn,
Yes.
Councilor Berman,
Yes.
Councilor Hatch,
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Thank you. It is now untabled by a motion 7-0. Can we promote City Planner Hamblin, please?
Good evening.
Good evening, Bob. Thank you for joining us. So I believe it was on the 24th, there were some questions and some on the suggested motion, and some things needed to be changed. And I believe that is still the case.
Mr. Mayor, I now have to read the motion in for us to discuss it. I had to take it off the table I had to withdraw my initial motion to take it off the table, and now I have to make the motion. Sorry about that.
I'd have to go back to the 24th, but I think you've already made the motion. It was tabled after you made it. So it would need to be amended, therefore, not re-motioned. Because you made the motion, it was then tabled. You've now untabled it, so you have a standing motion. You need to amend the motion or pass or defeat the motion.
That's correct.
That is where we are at this time. So, City Planner Hamblin, do we need to amend this motion? And if so, please let the council know how it needs to be amended so that we can move forward this evening.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. This item, as it appeared on the May 24th agenda, did not include each of the 5 parcels that are being considered for rezoning. And likewise, the draft motion presented to the council did not correctly list each of those 5 parcels. The suggested motion that is before the council this evening does correctly list the 5 parcels, tax map 87, lot 17, and then tax map 96, lots 9, 9-1, 1, and 2. We have a confirmation from the owners of each of the 5 properties that indeed they are very interested in being rezoned from West residential to rural conservation. And I think that's it in a nutshell. I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions for City Planner Hamblin? Seeing no questions, and the motion has now been confirmed as correct. Correctly read, the standing motion from last week is still on the table. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Berman.
Mr. Mayor, I thought what I just heard was the motion from last week was not correct, but the suggested motion in our packet tonight is correct. And therefore, I move to amend the language to read, I move to approve the final reading and adopt the rezoning request for the following parcels off New County Road. Tax map 87, lot 17, and tax map 96, lots 9, 9-1, 1, and 2.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman to amend the previous motion, and it was seconded by Councilor Johnston to approve the final reading to adopt rezoning request for the parcels of New County Road, tax map 87, lot 17, and tax map 96, lots 9, 9-1, 1, and 2. Any discussion on the amendment? On the amendment only, roll call vote. Councilor Archer,
Aye.
Councilor Purdy,
Yeah.
Councilor Gunn,
Yes.
Councilor Berman,
Yes.
Councilor Hatch,
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion pass, the amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion now as amended. Any discussion on the main motion as amended? Roll call vote on the main motion as amended. Councilor Archer,
Aye.
Councilor Purdy,
Yeah.
Councilor Gunn,
Yes.
Councilor Berman,
Yes.
Councilor Hatch,
Yes.
Councilor McPhail,
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. And that brings us to the end of the action items, brings us to item 10 on the agenda, which is new business. And 10A, we have a Chapter 81 conveyance of city-owned property at 32 Market Street on page 121 in your packet. City Planner Hamlin, will you be taking us through this Chapter 81 request?
I would be glad to, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Yes, a bit of deja vu here, Mr. Mayor and councilors. About 8 years ago, the city considered potentially selling this parcel to Southern Maine Affordable Housing or a similar entity. That effort was headed up by Guy Gagnon, currently the housing director in our sister city of Biddeford, and Carl Lackery, who is a Saco-based housing consultant. With this roughly 1.2 acre parcel, they proposed to build a multi-family dwelling, potentially as much as 10 units. And in fact, that was the size of the project that was approved by the planning board, with an intended audience of seniors who are downsized, those who may be living in older housing that simply was not appropriate any longer. The notion was that they would sell and then seek something considerably smaller and affordable, and also offer them the opportunity to stay relatively within close proximity to downtown. At the time, the city council was proactive in terms of seeking to encourage affordable housing and also senior housing. The city had been offered and voted to accept the parcel in question free of charge by Down East Energy. Down East recognized that it was an impacted property. Those who have been in Saco for a few decades or more will recall that this was, the property was used as an oil storage depot. There were oil storage tanks on the property. Those were removed several years ago. Upon acquisition of the property, Down East Energy also assisted with its cleanup. And actually wrote a check to the city to help out. But far and away, a brownfield grant that was obtained from Southern Maine Planning and Development provided the funding that enabled the city to remove the contamination and restore the parcel to some level of reusability. So with that in mind, the council agreed to, and there is a copy of a purchase and sale agreement that was effective going on 7 or 8 years ago now. Mr. Gagnon, Mr. Lackery brought the project to the planning board, got as far as getting an approval for the site plan for a 10-unit project. At that point, the city had embarked on what became the 2018 update of the comprehensive plan. Along with that update was a projected downtown development district. And you don't have to go back too far to find a map of that. It certainly included this part of downtown. And the thinking, as I recall, on Mr. Gagnon and Mr. Lackery's part, that there was a potential for perhaps some TIF assistance as far as being in town, that downtown development district. Waiting for the update of the comp plan to come to fruition, financing became increasingly scarce. As I recall, the site plan approval was only good for a couple of years, so the passage of time pretty much worked against this project. At this point, the site plan approval is null and void, having expired at least a few years ago now. Mr. Gagnon and Mr. Lackery have approached the city once again, 6 months ago or more, recognized that the need for affordable and senior housing is ever greater, and asked to revisit the issue with the city council. So we have gone through the usual motions with the Chapter 81 application. Staff have provided comments that you'll find that in your packet, councilors. At this point, it's been recognized by some staff members that there is some recreational reward here too. The parcel is actually, again, 1.2 acres, but part of a larger 2.75 acre city parcel, which abuts Diamond Riverside Park on the downstream side of the railroad tracks, which 32 Market Street abuts. Immediately upstream on the other side of the railroad tracks is roughly a 20-acre open space parcel conveyed to the city 15 or more years ago. So there's some potential, as pointed out by Parks and Rec Director Ryan Summer, for a trail system. Ryan actually has envisioned the portion of the parcel in question as a potential second dog park in the city. Once again, liking the proximity to the existing Diamond Riverside Park. Lastly, I would just note that the railroad tracks that abut the parcel, also the site of a potential future extension of the Eastern Trail. As councilors may know, the Eastern Trail follows the old Eastern Rail line, and that's true all the way from South Portland down to Kittery. In this part of town, the projected Eastern Trail route would follow right along these railroad tracks, immediately adjacent to 32 Market Street, and in a proposed vision for the trail. It would cross the Saco River right at the location of the existing railroad trestle. So that's been on the books for about 20 years. Whether we see that come to fruition at some point in the future or not is anybody's guess. But staff had pointed out, and the planning board took pains to ask that staff reach out to the Eastern Trail Alliance and also involve Saco Bay Trails in this, and seek further comment from Ryan Summer in terms of his thoughts for future trail connections. So forgive my long-windedness, but there's a lot going on here, and if I can answer any particular questions, I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob? Councilor Hatch.
Bob, I just had a couple of points I was hoping to get some clarification on as this thing moves forward. When I looked at the old notes of the prior activity, and by the way, I'm very supportive of this as a preface to my comments. It seemed like the market segment we were trying to appeal to was clearly seniors who were looking to downsize. I saw somewhere in the plans the sketches of 750 square foot units, so fairly small residential units. My only concern on that regard was whether or not those seniors who we were trying to appeal to were actually coming from Saco, had to be coming from Saco, selling a property in Saco so they could stay in Saco. And I didn't see any evidence of that linkage, and whether or not that's an appropriate thing to do. But I would think if we were going to move forward with a project of this type, we would want to make sure that our own residents who are faced with that kind of downsizing affordability situation would have some level of priority, at least in the initial phase of this project. So I throw that out as a comment and something to think about as this moves forward. I've also seen in the notes there's varying degrees of the size of the easement, whether it's 10 feet or 40 feet, and I would just want to make sure that whatever easement we are able to secure here, that it is adequate for the recreational component of this. We had one resident, Jane Karen, who's in my ward, made a comment of how important that was to her, and I'm sure to a lot of folks, and obviously to many of us here in the city. And then my last point, and it's just a point. It's not a yay or nay kind of thing, but I was reading some comments from, I believe it came from Joe Laveria about, and maybe even Howard, about work that had been done in that area, which we're all aware of, and the recapturing of sewer fees and those kinds of things. And when I started adding up the numbers, it seemed fairly significant, but I certainly, if there are some opportunities to recapture some of that cost, if not all of it, without impacting the affordability level. I understand we're trying to make these units affordable, but I think we ought to be working pretty hard to see if we can pull that into the mix as well. So those are my three comments, just for you to catalog and as this thing moves forward.
Thank you, Councilor Hatch. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. So yeah, I support, the concept. Also, I supported it several years ago when it was last before council. I do feel as though, an easement is a must. I wasn't on council at the time, but I certainly was closely following, and I remember this topic. And as I recall at the time, the land was originally acquired with the intent of the expansion of Diamond Riverside Park. The senior housing project came up after the city had begun those conversations with, I think it was Dead River. So, now if we're going to be gifting the land, I think council needs to retain access for both the Eastern Trail and the city, ideally along that railroad corridor. I guess one of the questions I have, moving forward the next time, I recognize that, in the documentation that the 40-foot easement along the railroad corridor is challenging to the developer. So I was just curious, I hadn't seen anywhere else in the packet as to whether or not, the city has looked to the northerly side of the railroad as a location for the path instead, as an alternative option. And that way we could accept that easement on the southerly side of the property that's been proposed by the developer as an additional access and exit point. Then the other thing I was curious about, and I know it's probably hard to predict, but what the price point of these would be, and what the estimated return the city would be seeing through increased tax valuation. As was mentioned by Councilor Hatch, the city has put significant amounts of money into this property over the years. So, I would like to try to recoup, as much as we can. And obviously, if we have an idea of what that increased tax revenue would be, it's helpful to at least justify it. And then the other thing, I raised this actually in the past years ago, never got an answer. So I'm hoping I can get an answer now. And it's particularly concerning to me that years ago, when we went about cleaning up this site, we used the Saco, or the Land for Saco Futures bond. The proceeds was like $30,000. Given that we're now gifting the site away and not retaining it for the intent of that bond at the time, I'm just curious if we should reach out to legal counsel, specifically the bond counsel, to see if we're running afoul with the bond, as that may lead to future issues when we go to bond. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Any further questions for Bob? Councilor Berman.
Not a question, just a quick comment and third voice in general support of the project, but emphasizing the importance of the right of way for the Eastern Trail. I think that's a critical aspect that we need to preserve for the city. The larger, the 30 feet, if possible.
Thank you, Councilor Berman. Councilor Hatchett, this has been assigned to you as the council liaison. Are you more than happy to entertain that?
I am, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. I'd be happy to
So,
do that.
Council, you will see this come forward in a upcoming agenda, and City Planner Hamlin will attempt to answer some of the questions that have been posed tonight at the first reading. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, moving on to item B, which is a Chapter 81 review conveyance of city-owned property at 509 Buxton Road, page 162 of your packet, excuse me. City Planner Hamlin, I believe you're going to stick on with us and walk us through this as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, well, let's leave downtown behind and head out Route 112. The property in question is at the corner. Excuse me while I scroll down here. Corner of Buxton and Grant Roads. It would be on the easterly side, so immediately before reaching Grant Road. There it is. It's on the right-hand side of Buxton Road, marked by clearly some wetlands that are quite close to Route 112 Buxton Road. The city acquired this roughly 16-acre parcel for the non-payment of taxes in January of 2018. Evidently, this could have been acted on a little sooner, but given the busy nature of things in the planning department, And then the pandemic cropping up. This has just been shuttled off to the side until fairly recently. And we got a message from Finance Director Salas saying, okay, let's move this thing along. So we are. City departments, as usual, have been asked for input on this property. And Mayor and councilors, you'll find that staff sourced comments within the packet. Also, mapping information so you can determine exactly where this is. Perhaps of most use, I found very helpful. While Dick Lambert was still on the city's payroll as the city's code enforcement office director, he made a visit out to the property and generated what is a June of 2018 2 or 3 page report on what he found out there. Generally, kind of an older rundown building is still on the property. Found some junk automobiles, some barrels that I don't believe he investigated too closely, but there were barrels, they were standing upright. Might there be something in those barrels? There could very well be, but that has not been determined. This was precipitated not only by Finance Director Salas, but there is, I believe, an abutting property owner who has taken notice of the city ownership of this parcel, and he has indicated via email that he would be interested in acquiring it. Planning board has taken a look at this property, of course, and made a recommendation that it's been a few months, but yes, the planning board arrived at a recommendation that the property be considered for sale. They recognized its location at the corner of certainly the busy Route 112, somewhat less busy Grant Road, but asked might some additional right-of-way make sense for the city to consider as part of any sale to another property. The Department of Public Works will be consulted for the potential of adding perhaps a 10 or 20 foot wide strip along both Buxton Road and Grant Road, simply to expand the right of way down there prior to the any potential sale of the property. So the planning board gives a thumbs up for the potential conveyance of the property. Staff by and large as well. And that's pretty much it. I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions at this time from council? That happens at least once every meeting where you turn mute off and then start talking. So Councilor Johnston, then Councilor Hatch. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. So I think we acquired this in 2017 or 18, somewhere in there. And I think at the time it was council's intent always to, sell it and recoup the tax revenue that hadn't been paid. Several years ago, maybe right before the former city administrator left, I had spoke to him about, moving this forward and listing it with a broker, because I really think we should be, maximizing the proceeds on this. It is a usable parcel, and in the past we've sold things for pennies on the dollar. But I do have questions about if we've reached out to the Conservation Commission at all, if they see any potential use. The other thing that I'm aware of is that there's snowmobile trails on the property, and I didn't know if the Saco Pathfinders group maintains any of those trails, and maybe there's a potential easement we should seek for that. And then the other is Saco Bay Trails, and if they see any use for any portion of the property. Other than that, I support selling it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Councilor Hatch.
Yes, Bob, I was just wondering, has anybody addressed those barrels and those vehicles in terms of environmental impact at all? Has anybody looked into this? Or
Counselor, no, there's been no follow-up that I'm aware of since Mr. Lambert was out there going on 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't blame him from not wanting to get too close, but just a thought. I don't know if that's something that we should take a peek at.
Councilor Johnston.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. I think it was last year, and I may be wrong, but didn't we budget this revenue last year, the sale of this? Remember it coming up at least once, and so I'm just curious how that weighs in. Thank you.
Yeah, Counselor, I'm not sure of that, but I would be happy to check into it.
Councilor Berman.
Yeah, just again, a second note that seeking some Conservation Commission input on possible uses for this land would be really useful. Looks like a pretty unique parcel.
Any other questions, comments on this on 509 Buxton Road? Councilor Purdy, you are the council liaison. Are you willing to stay on as the council liaison?
Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you. So we will see this future city council meeting. And Bob, you have some questions that the council would like answered for that first reading.
Lovely, thank you.
Up next is item C, a zoning ordinance amendment request to terminate a contract zone at 401 Main Street, page 185 in the packet. City Planner Hamblin, I think you're staying on with us yet again for this item.
Indeed, yes. Some counselors who've been, paying attention for some years will go back to when this was quite a little item of discussion. June Giuliano and Dave Stanley, a wife and husband who operate a cappella salons or similar in a few other communities in southern Maine, had sized up Saco, liked what they saw, and decided they'd like to open a new salon here. They liked the looks of 401 Main Street and ended up purchasing the property. At about the same time they closed on the property, they realized that the zoning might not be as helpful to what they had planned for the property as they had thought. It came around to a contract zone making the most sense to allow this commercial use in what otherwise used to be the R1B zone, a residential zone. Today, I believe it's medium density residential. So that went forward. It was something of a contentious discussion. The surrounding neighbors were not real excited by seeing this property become a commercial property. But be that as it may, the contract zone was passed by the council at the time. And this was, yes, back in 2006. And as most of you I'm sure are aware, Acapello has operated for several years. Just closed up perhaps about 2 years ago. And while they closed the doors at this location, actually they moved up Main Street. So they still operate a salon here in town. The owners considered what then to do with the property and recognized that it's a pretty darn good time to be selling residential properties. They submitted an application to the city to in fact split the property. It's certainly a sizable parcel for that particular location and neighborhood. So the plan was to split it in two and sell the resulting lot as a house lot on Cleveland Street. And to, of course, sell the nice old home that had been occupied by the salon. Part of the contract zone considerations included a couple of easements that went favorably for the abutting Episcopal church. There was kind of a tit for tat thing. The Acapella property needed help with drainage, so a drainage easement was established that the church made possible. In turn, anybody familiar with the church, there recognizes that there's very little parking, and Acapella wasn't really busy on Sunday mornings, so a parking easement was worked out. And each of these easements were recognized by the contract zone, and the easements were worked out and recorded in the Register of Deeds. So when the church became aware that the salon was going to be leaving the property, certainly it began paying attention to how this was all going to be worked out. At this point, Ms. Giuliano has proposed to simply terminate the contract zone. In that a contract zone is, after all, just an amendment to a zoning ordinance or to a zoning map. Both actually. It's also true that to cause a contract zone to expire or to terminate, likewise, it's essentially undoing the amendment to both zoning map and ordinance. So that's the request by the applicant this evening before the council, to undo what was done some 14 or 15 years ago. And to allow the existing contract zone to expire, thereby returning the property to the current zoning, which again, I believe is medium density residential. So I know, once again, long and winding tale, but a lot of details in play here. If I can answer any questions for the council or the mayor, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Bob. Councilor McPhail, Councilor Archer, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, I actually have just received notice that from Ms. Giuliano that she had another potential sale last summer, which unfortunately did not go through due to the easement with the church and needing full disclosure. She has lost 3 sales of the property based on this. Due to that fact, she is now leasing the property. It is now a rental with no plans to split. And basically the site plan that came through the planning board is not going to be happening, for a decent amount of time, as long as she's got a tenant in the building. So the building is being used as residential. And my question with regard to the easement of the parking lot used by the church is in the contract zone, section 2, paragraph E, it states that she will be entering into an easement. By canceling the contract zone, will that carry over and canceling any easements or anything attached to the amendment?
Counselor, you'd be far better off if you were putting that to the city attorney. I'll give you my opinion, but it is strictly a legal matter. I would say that no, that should the contract zone be terminated, the easements would continue to exist.
So they are still considered a separate entity of the amendment.
They are recorded documents that reside in the York County Registry of Deeds. I will, in researching that, Counselor, I will absolutely turn to probably the attorney that we've utilized on this. The city attorney is actually a parishioner at that church. So we have turned to an attorney from Jensen Baird, who we've used in the past. And I'd be most comfortable, and I think you'd be best served if we asked that question of that attorney.
That would be Natalie Burns, correct? We've used her.
That is correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yep. Because I know that we've had a lot of go around on it over the last year and a half or 2 years with regard to that and not being able to get a straight answer of how that easement can be canceled or revoked. So, but again, just to make note that the property right now is being leased because she has not been able to sell, and it is basically back to a residential property.
Thank you, Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually was going to ask pretty much the same question as Councilor McPhail, because it was my understanding that a contract zone for usage is an agreement between the city and a party, whereas the easement, once given, is an agreement between two private parties. So we can't, it's my understanding that we couldn't override it because it would have to be an agreement between one entity and the church in this case.
Thank you, Councilor Archer. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I had a similar question, but on the last page of the packet, 198, February 16th, it says that the minutes are attached, and I couldn't find the minutes. They may be here, but if that could be added to the next packet. And then my other question was, does canceling the contract zone create any hardship by way of standards in the ordinance? So are they using that contract zone to meet the parking requirement presently, or are they grandfathered, and by canceling it, do we then create a hardship for the church when it comes to parking compliance?
Counselor, my response would be that essentially the church would be returning to the same hardship that it had endured for, well, that's an old building.
Used to be on Pleasant Street.
Yes. There is actually no on-site parking that I'm aware. I do not particularly travel that street, on Sunday mornings, but I'm sure that on-site parking, must be being utilized and must be very popular because literally, aside from the parking lot that has been available on the Acapella property, there's no other off-street parking. So, yeah, it would be regarded as a non-conforming grandfathered use. Clearly, the off-street parking that would be required, say, for a newly proposed church building doesn't begin to address what today's standards would be.
Thank you.
Councilor Hatch.
As back to the easement, I'm a little confused, Bob. If this property returns to its prior residential use and the owner of the property decides to eliminate the prepared parking area, create a backyard lawn, I can't imagine that the church is going to be able to park on somebody's lawn. So I think I can't find the actual easement language in the packet. It may be in there. I'm not being critical. I can't find it, but I think it's going to be an interesting resolution here. If we grant the easement granted rights to park in a parking lot that doesn't exist anymore, I would think that would sort of negate the value of that easement to the church. So I'm not an attorney, and I guess we'll have to rely on counsel to figure that one out for us.
I appreciate that, Counselor. I think we'd be best served. I will certainly be in touch with Attorney Natalie Burns between now and the next meeting, and we will have answers for you.
Any other questions for Bob at this time? Councilor McPhail, you're the councilor liaison on this. Do you still want to be the liaison?
Yes, please.
Okay. And so Bob will try to answer some of the questions for the next time this makes its way to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Councilor Johnston, you referenced minutes. Now, would those be planning board minutes, council, anything specific?
Yeah, it says review of appeal by the planning board and then minutes attached. So that appeal review isn't in the packet, and I just wanted to read them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Bob. With that, that's the end of the new business items. That brings us to item 11 of the agenda, and that is the administrative update. City Administrator Canrath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For our next meeting on June 21st, you'll be seeing 5 proposed collective bargaining agreements that we've been working on the past number of months. Those draft contracts will be to you before that meeting, so you have time to review, and then we'll discuss questions and anything else you might have at our meeting on June 21st. That will be in executive session, obviously. Election day reminder tomorrow, June 8th is election day. Please remember to vote. Polls will be open at the community center from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The voters may also utilize the ballot drop box on the Cutts Avenue side of City Hall to drop their absentee ballots right up until the polls close at 8 p.m. An update on the Army Corps of Engineers and our letter of support that we sent off a few months ago now. Just this past week, I was joined by the Mayor and Councilor Berman. We had a phone conference with the ACUE for a status update on where things stand since they received our letter of support. They're currently working on revising cost estimates for the project that were contained in the 2019, the last report that came out. They will do those revisions, send it back to headquarters for approval. At that point, we can begin to actually look at and proceed to drafting a PPA, a project partnership agreement, as well as discussion and approval. That time frame they gave us is going to be approximately 6 months before we have a draft PPA in front of us for consideration. So progress is being made, albeit slowly, but we have some light at the end of the tunnel. This is, I will note, further than we've gotten at any point in the past 20 years or so. We've been discussing this, so we will have something to consider within the next 6 months or so on this option 6 project. An RFP opportunity to announce the city is soliciting proposals for tax exempt capital financing for the buyout and upgrade of the city's street lighting infrastructure, including conversion to LED for a reduction in electrical usage. The proposal will cover an estimated 1,425 lighting units with a total financing amount of $502,732, inclusive of 5% project contingency. The buyout of the streetlights will be from Central Maine Power, and the upgrade work will be done by Real Term Energy US. Please submit proposals via email to Interim Finance Director David Diesner by 4 p.m. on June 25th of this year. Lastly, you may have heard this already, but York County will be having a public hearing to solicit feedback and thoughts on the uses for funding allocated to the County of York under the American Rescue Plan Act. It will be held June 16th at 2 p.m., 1364 Main Street in Sanford. Written comments may also be submitted to the county commissioners by email by emailing ka.dumont, D-U-M-O-N-T, at yorkcountymaine.gov. I know a number of Saco citizens will be in attendance to talk about specific projects, namely things happening regarding coastal erosion. They will be there at the meeting. That's all I have. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, City Administrator Canrath. Any questions for Brian? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I don't have any questions specific to what you addressed, but I do have a question pertaining to this agenda. At our previous council meeting, I believe council took action to set public hearing on a couple of items that were scheduled for tonight. And so I'm just curious as to why council's actions weren't followed through. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you remember, did we postpone a few items for public hearing at the last meeting?
I would have to look.
Yeah, I mean, or Councilor Johnston, if you have specific items that you're looking for, you just let us know and we can discuss that tomorrow at our agenda meeting.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, moving on to item 12, council discussion and comment. Any council discussion and comment? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I brought this up last week or 2 weeks ago. We haven't appointed Councillor Hatch to any subcommittees, and my concern with that is my assumption is that he's going to fill the role of former Councillor Minthorn on Traffic Safety Committee. I believe that the chair is assuming that also. And with him not being appointed, I would think that he probably can't legally vote at our next upcoming meeting next week. So again, we need to move this along and get him on these committees. Thank you.
Councilor Johnston, thank you very much. I did hear your request, and as I have already done, I've already looked it over with Tim Murphy, the city solicitor. He does not need to be appointed because the councilor was appointed as a liaison to those seats, not the individual person. So the Ward 5 councilor was appointed. Therefore, Councilor Hatch, who is now the Ward 5 councilor, goes on to those boards and committees until the end of this year, when the boards and committees may change. That is the legal interpretation. That's why we haven't seen that.
Okay, well, I'd like to see that legal opinion by Mr. Murphy. Thank
Any further council discussion and comment? Moving on. Item 13, again, there was scheduled to be an executive session. Unfortunately, Attorney Linda McGill has told City Administrator Canrath right before the beginning of this meeting that there's no need to have there's no need to have a meeting tonight on this item. So there'll be no executive session this evening. So no report from executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Councilor McPhail, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilor Hatch? Any discussion? Roll call vote to adjourn. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yeah.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 7:43 PM. Have a great evening.